Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to, to my presentation of literature history. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Sayid Hassan Ariel. My student number is 1814025016. Today, I want to talk about Edwardian period. There are 5 points that I will present today. The first is the characteristic of the era. Second, the characteristic of the work of at that era. Third, the author and work of that era. Fourth, what do you know about this era? Fifth, what is the lesson you learn of this era? The characteristic of the era. To some nostalgic observer, the short reign of King Edward VII from 1901 to 1910 seemed like an autumn idyll, an era of international peace, internal security, and relative prosperity. It was a period ushered in by the conclusion of the South African War in 1902 and by the consolidation of Britain's imperial possession. To some, it seems to have a symbolic close, not, not with the end of the king's reign, but with the death of Captain Scott and his party in the Antarctic, having failed to reach South Pole before the better organized Norwegian Amundsen. In March 1912, a month later, with a terrible loss as the life of the unsinkable Titanic sank in North Atlantic. Yet, to look back at the Edwardian period and somehow cut off what was happening in 1914 is to misread history grossly. King Edward might have been happy with the popularly bestowed title of the Peacemaker, and even happier with the pomp and circumstances of the state visits and intimate avuncular chat with his numerous close relatives among ruling dynasties of Europe. But in Britain, at least policies were made by cabinets, not kings, and the drift of the history was far from being Britain's control. The characteristic work of the work out at that era. Despite the reality of its international prestige and power, Britain's economy and military success was now relative. Its rate of economic growth was stagnating, especially when compared to those of the United States and Germany. Its most vaunted naval supremacy was being actively challenged by the rapid expansion of the Imperial German Navy. If older types of battleship were now obsolete, Britain's aim of automatically outnumbering other naval powers became redundant. Germany laid down its own dreadnought type battleship, the Nassau, in 1907. The United States, France, and Japan rapidly followed suit. Military history was being welded, and those eyes that chose to see could readily recognize that a larger and more disastrous convergence beyond that of a ship and an iceberg was become inevitable. The authors of the era. To Arnold Burnett, writing in his disappointingly unadventurous study, The Author's Craft, 1914, the mind of an ideal novelist should be permitted and controlled by common sense. This common sense precluded a break with a received view of character with the supposed stability of the narrative form. Like Anne Veronica, 1909, the book is forthright in its discussion of marriage and women's rights, describing, very much from a male perspective, a gradual discovery of sex as a thing collectively, per tongues that I have to mingle with my statecraft if my pictures be true. What do you know about this era? In 1919, a victory medal was struck in Britain for presentation to all those soldiers who had survived what was described on its surface as the Great War for civilization. As the work of the war poet suggests, civilization has effectively floundered in mire of the trenches that had been pitted and hauled by the mechanism and machines of modern military destruction. If Britain and British Empire had emerged politically unscathed, the same was not true for the rest of the combatants' Europe, nor was it true of the minds and the opinions of the survivors, of those too young to fight. Thank you.